Jack Ingebrigtsen is going to do in the 1500. He has time to look behind him. 20 years of age, and he is on top of the world.
But coming down for a maiden national crown, Cornwall is the champion.
Rouge has run his race, or has he? Has he got anything left? Rouge trying to get there. Kipchoge the junior's there. Rouge is trying to get to the line. Kenya wins it. Kipchoge takes
Vivian Chariot's turn. And what a proud moment for her and the Kenyans. The first woman from her nation to take the 5,000 metre title. Vivian Chariot's in Dreamland.
on the outside. Ollie Hoare of Australia comes. Jake Whiteman has just spent. It's going to be Chariot and Hoare. Who's going to get it? It's going to be Australia. The gold.
Pre-order now and make a difference. Experience the ultimate in trail running with the Tarkine Trail Devil. With its impressive combination of eco-friendly materials and advanced technology, this footwear is designed to conquer any terrain. Whether you're looking to run UTMB or simply explore the great outdoors, the Tarkine Trail Devil offers unmatched versatility, support, durability and comfort. Featuring a lightweight and responsive design with loads of support, your legs will thank you as you crush personal bests and conquer new terrain. With our company focused on sustainability and ethical manufacturing processes, you can feel good about your impact on the planet. Also, as a pre-order promotion, you have the opportunity to decide where 10% of your order fee will be donated. All pre-orders will receive their shoes during May to June 2023. Visit tarkine.com.
5 years ago, Zach Facioni was a top junior based out of Sydney when he made the pivotal decision to commit to Wake Forest and move to the United States. Since then, it's been one hell of a ride for Zach, as he rewrote Wake Forest record books and lowered his PBs to 3:39 for 1,500 metres, 3:27 for 5,000 metres, and 7:51 for 3,000 metres. We caught up with Zach as he is figuring out the transition out of college and back to Australian shores to further his running career away from the support and comfort that the NCAA system affords. Zach, I've wanted to have you on Runners Tribe for years now, man, and finally got around to it. Welcome, Runners Tribe, and good to chat to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's awesome to be here.
Zach, for those listening who, are not so sure, maybe they're in their teens, Aussies who are a bit isolated, what stage in your college career are you at?
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely a little far removed from the Australian running scene by this point. So I'm in my 5th year now at Wake Forest. I basically finished my last exam college like 3 days ago or something like that. So a couple months left, a few more races, and then I'm out.
Is that pretty sad? Like, is it, a good time's come to an end? Is it sad, or are you ready to move on?
It's bittersweet. I think obviously I've been here for 5 years now, and it's a long time. And it's been awesome, but I think I'm definitely ready to move on. I mean, at the same time, like it's been such a large part of my life that it's definitely weird to know that it's all going to be over in, a couple months' time. But, I've got some cool things on the horizon, I think, so I'm super excited to see what's to come. But yeah, no, it's definitely a little weird for sure. Nice.
And we're going to jump into those future plans later in this podcast. But for now, we last had you back on on Runners Tribe in 2020 during the pandemic. I think it was maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it was like your 2nd year of college. No, it was just a Q&A, not a podcast, obviously. Obviously you got swept up in the whole pandemic stuff. How do you feel about it? Like, do you feel like you were robbed of kind of 6 months or 7 months of your kind of collegiate experience, or looking back on it now, is it just a bit of a blip and you don't really think about it?
It was definitely weird. I mean, thinking back on it, I've talked to a lot of the people in my class. It almost just feels like we lost a whole year, because we left kind of midway through the end of my sophomore year and then didn't come back until halfway through junior year. And even that second half of that semester it's all online classes. So it didn't really feel like a full year anyway. So it was basically like I finished my full freshman year, COVID happened, and then I'm a senior and I'm almost done. So it was definitely weird for sure. But I think from like a running perspective, it's one of those things where, and I think you saw this kind of worldwide, a lot of people managed to make a really big jump just because everyone was stuck at home training. There were no major races to get ready for, and everyone was putting in months and months of just work. And then everyone came back and was just like firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. Were you stuck in Sydney training, or were you stuck in the US training?
I was in Sydney. Yeah. So I dipped out and came back around March. So just after indoors. And then I was in Sydney until January.
Just back hanging with the parents for ages, hey?
Pretty much, yeah. Just stuck at home, running a couple times a day, sitting around doing nothing.
That sounds pretty good to me. Hey, I know a bit about your background behind the decision to go to college, but it's obviously a while ago now, and there's going to be a bunch of teenagers listening to this who may need to consider this option in their future. Can you tell everyone a little bit about the story behind your decision to leave one of Australia's kind of best groups at the time and head to the US?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a big decision for sure. And I think, especially a few years ago, back when I was first thinking of coming over, there was this whole stigma around like college running, in that you'd go to college, they'd like beat the shit out of you, race you like 100 times a season, and then you just get injured and you'd never do anything again. And like, that was a very real fear for me as well. And that's why, initially I wasn't planning on coming at all. I finished high school and went and did Sydney Uni for a year and a half. And obviously I had a great setup back home with Ken and that whole squad. I had some of the best runners in Australia in that group. So I never really felt the need to change things up and, move to the other side of the world to do school and running when I had a pretty good setup back home. But I think kind of as things progressed, I just wasn't enjoying that balancing act at home. You get zero support in Australian universities when you're trying to be an elite athlete. When you're, trying to go to Flagstaff for a few months and do races in the US, or you thinking of going to Europe, it's impossible because the school's not going to help you at all. Your professors aren't going to understand anything, so it's pretty much all on you to try and organize all of that and balance everything. And I think when I realized that coming to the US, that was kind of integrated into one thing. You had the running aspect and the school aspect together, and those things would work simultaneously, and they weren't like competing forces. That was a big driver for me. And I think something that was really hurting my performance as an athlete when I was at home for those few years was trying to balance everything, because it's really, really hard when you don't have any support trying to do all that by yourself, and it's super stressful and it puts a lot of strain on your body, and it's tricky to be your best self. And that's not to say that you can't do it, because obviously a lot of people have, but I think personally it was just too much and I wasn't enjoying it. And I think when you're not enjoying what you're doing, it's hard to run well, and it's hard to do school well and everything like that. So that's that was my thought process with it all.
Yeah, it's so tricky. Hey, it feels kind of like when you stay in Sydney or you stay in Australia post high school, it just feels like an extension of high school, doesn't it, when you're trying to run really hard, but you've also got kind of pressures to maybe get a job or do other things, and it's just it's not, do you feel like there's been a shift in coaches though, advice now, like compared to 10, 15, even 5, 6 years ago? Like there seems to be a lot more coaches now who are pushing and encouraging their athletes to look into college.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I think, if you looked at the Australian, all-time lists 10 years ago, you maybe find 1 or 2 guys that went to college in the top 20. If you look now, it's probably a lot more than that. It's kind of getting close to a very even split. So I think part of that's coaches in Australia's mindset changing, but I also think the US college system's changed quite a bit as well in the past 10 years or so. And a lot of coaches have started to adapt to not just throwing their athletes at the wall and seeing who sticks. Like there's some schools that do that, of course, the schools that have, 10, 20, 30 distance guys in any one event, and they can just see what happens. But there are schools where coaches just can't afford to do that. So like Wake obviously is one of those schools. We don't have a massive roster. Our coach can't afford to just like give people 100 miles a week, give them like 3 workouts every week and just see what happens, and whoever survives, great, because we just don't have the guys to play with. Yeah. So I mean, as much of it's about like picking the right school as anything, but I think there's definitely been a mindset change, 100%.
Yeah, I know you have like a really devoted family, and you guys probably spend a lot of time together, not a lot of time, but a fair bit of time together figuring out the right place for you. Is that right? Like, did you travel over to the US and interview schools and all that, or how did that work out?
Honestly, it was almost the exact opposite of that. I had a whole lot of offers in probably 2015, 2016. I had one great race, state 3K, I think in 2015, where I ran 8:13. And then, a couple of weeks after that, I had a bunch of schools reaching out. And this is like still in that period where I didn't really want to come over. So I basically just said no to everyone and burnt like every ridge possible. And then kind of mid 2018, Georgia Evans, who I used to train with, committed to Wake. And then the Harding Deleuze twins committed not long after that. And then the coach who had previously reached out to me, John Hayes, reached out to me again and was like, hey, you've got these three coming who I know you're friends with. Are you sure you don't want to come? And I was like, oh, shit, maybe. And I was already in the US for a month doing some training up in Flagstaff. And then I had a race in Portland. So I was like, I'm already here. I may as well just go and visit and see what it's about. So I took a red eye from LA over to Wake on my way home, visited for like, I don't know, 48 hours and then came back. And that was pretty much it.
Gotcha. So as a freshman, you were what, like 21 sort of thing?
I was 19 when I started. I turned 20 second semester freshman year. Yeah.
Cool. That's cool. That's awesome to hear. And so being a Sydney boy, how have you found living in the US? Like not just the collegiate stuff, but life outside of running. Has it been enjoyable, or have you loved it all, or has it been, some tough times as well?
Oh, I mean, there are always times where you're gonna miss home. I mean, obviously it depends where you go. I'm not in like a massive city or anything like that, so it's very different to back home. But I think part of the thing that so many people enjoy about coming to college and the whole system is like the people that you meet. Like you become so close with the guys on the team, and you make so many friends and like lifelong friends that you're gonna keep in touch with forever. That it kind of almost doesn't really matter where you are. Like you're gonna have a good time. You're going to be spending lots of time around these guys that you're like logging shit tons of miles with every week. And then you're hanging out with them outside of, training and everything like that. And I mean, it's a great environment. It's a great time.
And
I loved it. Yeah.
You guys pretty much all live within like spitting distance of each other?
Yeah, pretty much. Mm-hmm. So the house I'm in right now, I've got, Thomas Van Oppen, who was just fourth at, NCAA's in the 15 last year. He's a 3:37 guy. The guy lives across from me, Aaron Los Harris, Spanish guy, who's run 28:13. And then I've got Joaquin, who's an American guy downstairs, who's run 13:30 something odd. So we all just live together. We all hang out together. It's great.
You can see how that works to keep one a bit more motivated than kind of living in the suburbs back in Australia, in a big Australian city, and being 30 minutes away from your nearest mate or something like that, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, like when the guys that you see every morning when you wake up are all like doing the exact same thing that you are, they've got the same goals and the same ambitions. It like just keeps you that much more locked in than you otherwise would be.
You've had some epic races over there. We've tried to keep up a little bit on Runner's Trial with some of them, but obviously we missed a lot of it. But just what are a few of the highlights, man? If you look back over all the races you've had, the wins you've had, you've smashed a bunch of Wake Forest records. What are kind of two or three of the highlights that kind of you're never going to forget?
Definitely NCAA Cross this year was insane. I don't know if you know much about like Wake's history as a program, but we used to be really, really good in like late 80s, early 90s. And then we were really bad for like 20, 30 years, like all the way through 2000s, like late 2000s, early like kind of teens. We were like shit. Like towards the right bottom of the ACC, like 13th, 14th out of 15 teams, that kind of thing. When I got here as a freshman, we were like starting kind of on the way up, which is like the kind of John Hayes era. He took them from 13th in the ACC, and then the next year I think they were 6th, and then 5th was my freshman year, and then this year we won it, coming 5th at NCAA's. So we were like 9 points off of the podium, just barely lost to Stanford, which was like insane. It's something that even like thinking about now, it's kind of doesn't really feel real. Like it just seems so far-fetched from when I first got here that we managed to take it so far and almost get right towards the top. Like we were competing with NAU and all these schools that Wake Forest has no business being anywhere near. But like being a part of that and seeing kind of where we came from when I first got here and where we ended up is something that's like super special. And it was like a little heartbreaking that we couldn't get on the podium for sure. We were so close. It was just 9 points away. But regardless, like that was amazing. And that's something that I'm never going to forget. And in terms of like an individual race, the home meet that I just ran, where I ran my most recent 5K PB a couple of weeks ago now, was incredible. That's the only home meet I've ever run, and it obviously will be the only home meet I ever do run. But the atmosphere is amazing, and I'm just super thankful that I got to, race on our home track in front of like our own fans. We had like 100+ alum come out and support. And to put it all together on that day and run a nice PB after a good couple of years was amazing. That's definitely something I'm never going to forget either.
And for those listening, I'm pretty sure that was a 13:27 at Wake Forest, hey?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it was.
Nice. We're going to get into kind of your future in terms of events a bit later on, but it's cool that one of your highlights is just that team thing, it's just so different to most runners' highlights where it's just something they did individually. I think that's the difference between college and staying in Australia, hey?
Oh, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that's like one of the biggest differences of anything. When like you talk to people back home, no one thinks of it as a team sport. It's an individual sport.
Yeah.
But when you come here, like especially in cross, it's like a whole different mindset. You're not out there running for yourself. You're out there running for your boys. And then, at the same time, that they would like do the exact same thing for you. Like they're out there putting in all those hours and grinding and killing themselves for you. And so, it's like, it's different. You do the same thing for them and you kind of run with a whole different sense of purpose that you just never really experience that anywhere else. And I think that in itself is something really special. It gives you like a whole new appreciation for the sport.
Is it fair to say like the closest that some Australians will get to that, the guys who, go to guys and girls who go to private schools, some of the private school systems I guess it's maybe the closest I'll ever get,
I think so. And even still, like it's nowhere near, but definitely like similar kind of vibe.
Yeah. How many Wake Forest records do you hold now?
Right now it's 3, I believe. It used to be more, but a few of them got broken. So just 3 now.
So the 5,000 outdoor.
Mm-hmm. I've got the indoor 5K as well, which is a 13:33, I believe. And then I have the indoor 3K, which is 7:46.
Yeah, okay. That one's good. It's a pretty nice 3K. And outdoor 3K is like 51, right? 7:51?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, back over COVID.
Yeah, that's it. What's the plan, man? Like, are you see all these guys finishing up their collegiate careers, Ollie Hoare, who obviously everyone knows stayed in the US and, joined a really well-known group, and Jessica Hull, similar thing. Then you've got other guys who kind of went back to Australia and joined, Melbourne Track Club and all that sort of stuff. Are you allowed to talk much about this yet? What your plans are? Do you actually know? Or is it something that is just in the pipes?
I have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen. I don't know what I am allowed to say, purely just because like nothing's written yet or anything like that. Because I'm still, competing in the college system. I'm not allowed to sign anything until I finish my eligibility yet anyway. And I never know what's going to happen. Like a lot of things can change. Like this sport, one of the things about the sport is like you can have one race and then everything changes. So like you never know, but I think I have a pretty good idea of where I'm going to end up. It's probably going to be back home, so I can say that much. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I think it's going to be pretty cool. And I think I personally I have a lot more to give in this sport. I don't think I've kind of reached where I can. So I'm really excited to keep it going and just see where I can take things.
Nice. Is it hard saying goodbye to the US, having such a good run there, or are you just ready to just pack up and just head back home and get settled?
Yeah. I mean, it's tricky. When I first came over, I always figured that there was a good chance I'd stick around afterwards and stay here and try and run professionally somewhere here. But I think I'm ready to pack things up and come back home. Like kind of the closer I've gotten towards the end of my time here, the more I've wished that there was something akin to a US group back home, like some kind of system or group that was similar to what we're seeing over here, because I think like they do such a great job here with the pro groups and building that like team kind of atmosphere and culture in a professional setting. I think it's really helpful. because like the pro scene can be really like lonely sometimes and tough to get through by yourself. So if you can have that kind of support structure around you, I think that's incredible. So I kind of was always wishing that something like that back home existed.
And how, like, it's a huge call to make, right? Go back home or stay in the US. How did you make that? How are you making that decision? Like, if you reached out to guys like Ollie or, you know, other experienced guys who have been through it and got their opinions, or just heard them out or anything like that? Or is it just mainly you and your coach back there and your parents? And
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. I don't think people realize how tough it is to actually continue running in the US, especially like in a professional setting. There's like special visas and stuff you need to apply for. And to do that, you almost need to be like recruited by an agent initially. Like they almost need to reach out to you and get the process started, because it's not really something, as far as I understand, like it's not something that you can really do by yourself. Like it's a complicated process. I think it's like $8,000 or $9,000 to get the visa or something like that.
okay. Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, the pro running world's weird. It's very like hush hush. No one really tells you what's going on if you're on the outside. So the only people that really know what's happening are the people that are involved in it already. And so many of them are under like contract NDAs and shit like this, that you don't like really know what's going on until you're like in it. And unless someone reaches out to you and brings you in, you're kind of just like on the outside looking in, waiting for someone to like shoot your message and be like, hey, come join this pro group or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's tricky.
Yeah. And it's hard. Hey, we chatted years ago about how when you moved to college, the main change in your training was an increase in mileage and a reduction in intensity. Being kind of 3 years more mature, etc. Do you still feel that that's kind of one of the vital changes in your training that resulted in such improvements?
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. Definitely. And I think like as I've gotten older and become a more mature, like well-developed athlete, we've kind of just taken that same philosophy and pushed it further. You know, like everyone else in the world now, we're doing double threshold stuff. I mean, everyone's doing double threshold stuff, and I think everyone's doing it because it works. The first few years that we were doing.
So explain to everyone, like just listening, there's going to be some people, everyone I think listening is going to know what you mean by threshold stuff. But when you say double threshold stuff, just explain that.
Yeah. So, you know, in essence, threshold being like the pace that you should theoretically be able to run for an hour on that surface on that day and whatever you're wearing. And double threshold's a way to split it up into a morning and an afternoon session so you can get more mileage in at that pace. Because like if I were to tell someone to go out and run, you know, 10 by mile at threshold, like that's not an easy workout necessarily. Even though like threshold pace should be something that isn't super strenuous, when you start pushing the limits of how much you can do, it gets really tough and taxing on your body. So being able to split it up like that allows you to get a lot more miles in without necessarily beating you up as much. So like an example of something we might do, a few weeks ago, I did in the morning, I went 2 mile, 1 mile, 2 mile, 1 mile at threshold. So 6 miles knocked out in the morning, and then came back that afternoon and did another 5 by mile at threshold with some like 200s at like 15 pace or whatever. So like that, you can get 11 miles plus worth of like work in at that pace. And you can do it in a way that doesn't beat you up as much. So you can come back the next day feeling really good. And if you do it right, it can do wonders. Like we only started doing it kind of last year when I was coming off of my knee injury, which is why I missed the last indoor season. And I was doing kind of everything in the morning on an altitude treadmill and then coming back and doing stuff on the track in the afternoon, just as a way to kind of break up the mileage a little bit. And I think, you know, beyond kind of being able to get in a lot more miles, just stimulating your body twice in a day is huge for training.
And these double thresholds, in terms of taking it easy on your body, what surface are you doing these on? Like, does that come into it? Like grass versus road versus whatever, track, dirt, whatever
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it kind of depends. The way the NCAA works is that you're only allowed to like meet for a certain amount of hours every week. You can only like kind of do one session a day if you're like doing it properly. So the first kind of workout we have to do by ourselves. So it's not like they can take us anywhere. So a lot of the time it's just us doing it on the track or on the roads. And then in the afternoon, if we have the time, we'll go out to like grass soccer fields or something like that. kind of change up the surface a little bit. Or we have Salem Lake, which is basically a big packed gravel 7-mile loop that we do a lot of stuff on as well, just to kind of like change it up a bit so it's not all like running loops on the track.
And you're doing these thresholds based off heart rate? Like, do you have monitors on, or are you doing it off feel, or do you just do it so much that you pretty much know the pace that you need to be doing?
Yeah, we did a lot of heart rate stuff in the beginning, when it was still relatively new, just so we could like get a monitor and like a read on how we're doing it. But as we've gotten along, we have a pretty good idea of how we're meant to be doing it. But I'd have to say that at the same time this season, there were a lot of guys who are getting kind of burnt out just because we were running our threshold paces just that touch too quick. So we all slowed them back, 4 or 5 seconds a mile, and everyone started running better afterwards. So it's a really line between getting fitter and, having the idea in your head that like, oh, I'm fitter, I should be running this faster, but that's, not necessarily gonna you down the line. We also do some blood lactate testing here and there just to kind of get another feel for it as well.
Yeah. I know Lance Armstrong was juiced and stuff, but I listened to a podcast with him that he did a few years ago, just looking back over his training, and it sounds exactly the same as what he was really focusing on. The majority of his work, just this threshold work, just doing hours and hours over the week, So just let's just touch on this a tiny bit more. These threshold workouts, you're not on the ground after them. Hey, like when you finish them, you can still pretty much talk, and you can just recover quickly back home. You're not absolutely smashed, and you can just repeat it that arvo.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I'm not a massive expert or anything by any means on like the sports science behind it, but the way I understand it is like every person has their own like individual lactate curve, and your threshold is like that point on the curve before your lactate starts to exponentially spike. So it's basically like the hardest you can work without like extremely like fatiguing your body by like shooting your lactate way up.
And how many days a week are you doing this?
Usually 2 days a week. We work out Tuesdays and Fridays.
And it's mainly, so you're doing threshold work both those days?
Usually, yeah. Unless it's like a race week, or I'm getting something specific in for like really specific race work. But even still, if we're doing specific race work, I'll almost always get some element of threshold in either that morning or like before the specific stuff.
The other thing I want to touch on is the easy days in between all the workouts and stuff, right? Like, how easy are they? What kind of pace? Are you just rolling around chatting, or are you clipping around a bit faster?
I like to not actually even wear a watch when I do my easy runs, because I find that whenever I wear a watch and have like an actual pace, I'm always like just tempted to look at it and see what I'm running and be like, oh shit, I should be running a bit faster than that. So I just don't even bother. I know like a lot of the routes now around here, I know pretty much exactly how far they are, so I can pretty much just go and do anything from like 2 miles to 12 miles and know pretty much where to go and how far it's going to be. So I don't even bother.
And I remember a few years back you were saying that sometimes on a long run you'd do them pretty quick. Does that still come into it? Are you still doing that on a Sunday?
Yeah, definitely. Especially during cross country season. We've kind of been going out to this road. It's called Baden Lake. It's about an hour away from campus, and it's just rolling dirt hills the whole way. So I'm doing kind of 18-mile long runs right now, like 29-ish K, something like that. And it's like 2,000 plus feet of elevation over that long run. So it's pretty much up and down the whole way. And we'll just kind of take a couple miles easy and then start hammering, just averaging as fast as you can for the next kind of 16 miles. As long as you come off it all right for the Tuesday workout, then you're all good.
So you're legit just warming up for a few miles and then just hammering it for the rest of that long run at threshold, right?
Yeah.
Not beyond threshold.
Oh no, we wouldn't go that fast. No.
Okay.
So we'd be doing
it's not quite threshold.
Kind of, it's kind of like a sub threshold kind of thing.
Yeah, sub threshold. Yeah, makes sense. I feel like 5, 8, 10, like definitely, when I was in my 20s and early 30s and all that sort of stuff, not many coaches in Australia even did thresholds. It wasn't something that was talked about. The closest we got to was like maybe a monofartlek 5 by 2 minutes or 7 by 2 minutes with a minute float. Like,
yeah,
it was a different kind of way of doing it, right? And
Yeah, I'd never done threshold until I came here, ever.
exactly, yeah. I don't think I literally ever did a threshold until like when I was actually running. Like, it's a shame, but it's definitely just everyone's bread and butter now. Hey,
Yeah.
man, you're pretty versatile. From 339 over 1500 to 1327 over 5000. Is the 5,000 where you see yourself at? Or what event do you think you're going to be targeting?
I'd like to say I'm a 5K guy, and I think I'm a 5K guy. My coaches would love to see me in the 10K, and I'm actually running a 10K on Thursday of this week at our conference championship, so it's going to be my first one on the track. So we'll see how that goes. But I mean, I like the 5K. I think it's a good middle ground between kind of being able to flex what I can do in cross country and kind of some of that faster and speed stuff in that 15. So I think long term, I would like to see myself pursue the 5K for sure.
Hey, I'm just did some research and I can't find a mile PB outdoors in the States.
Correct. Yeah.
Did you not run a mile in 5 years in college in terms of outdoor? I know you've run a bunch of indoor miles, but
yeah, no, never run an outdoor mile. They're a lot less common than you'd think. Weirdly enough, for being the States, no one really runs them because it's not. No one's. I mean, I think you can get into regionals with a mile conversion or like through 15 split of the mile, but they're just not really run very often.
Damn, it's a shame. Hey, just be I know it's kind of meaningless these days. You run a 339, 1500, so everyone knows you can go sub 4, but it would still be nice to just knock it out.
I agree. Yeah, even indoors, I've never run a sub 4 mile, so that's definitely something I got to pick off the bucket list at some point.
Yeah, you're gonna have to get it done. Hey, it was 401 indoors. Is that? Well,
Yes, yeah, it's 401.
Back in 220. Yeah. So yeah, awesome. Zach, it's been awesome chatting. What I'd like to do is maybe chat again once you've settled back in Australia. Maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 months after you've started that, your new system, just to touch base with you, maybe go through all that decision making and see how it's going for you and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. No, that sounds great.
Awesome. Are there going to be some massive parties, as goodbye parties with everyone, or what?
I'm sure there will be. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, the end of the outdoor season is a little weird because everyone kind of dips off at different times. You've got all the people doing conference, and then everyone that hasn't made regionals will go home, and then everyone that doesn't make nationals will go home. So by the end, you've got 4 or 5 people left. Especially in a school like this, you don't have a whole massive crew going to NCAAs, but I'm sure we'll have some fun after NCAAs for sure with everyone that made it. 100%.
Zach, you seem like a pretty switched on guy, right? Just chatting to you, I get the impression that you've got a medical degree or, in the future, what's going on that front? What's happening on the professional front?
Yeah. So I just got my master's degree in business analytics, which is basically just data science, but for business stuff. I mean, it's tricky because obviously the balance now is do I want to go and run professionally and, chase that for a few years, or go and get a job and make 120K a year or do something like that. And obviously that's not going anywhere, and I've got years to do that. So, I mean, part of the big decision making process there was I know when I'm 45 or 50, if I just go and get a job, I'm going to hate myself.
Oh, 100%.
And regret that I never chased it. So I'm going to give it a crack, see what happens.
Yeah, screw the job. Just run, Just try to achieve your best, and then you can work so much. You got so many years ahead of you to work. Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Zach, it's been awesome, mate. Thank you.
Yeah.